Welcome to the podcast Beyond the Ballot, a Lone Wolf production. This is where we showcase local politics by providing a platform for candidates and elected officials. Today's episode is sponsored by Taxpayer Action Network. Taxpayer Action Network is a New York State-based political action committee focused on the advocacy of fiscally conservative policies, federalism, transparency, and limited government principles in local, county, and state government. Visit their website at taxpayeractionnetwork.com. Also, check out their Facebook, X, Twitter account at Taxpayer Action. I'm honored to have guest Kevin Byrne, Putnam County Executive, on the show today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
So far our guests have been, with the exception of Kevin O'Keefe, candidates or incumbents that are running in the primary. So obviously you're not running, you're joining the show. There have been, I would say, certain circumstances that have they've transpired that I think necessitates your guest appearance on the show. The first circumstance being an endorsement letter. You recently sent a letter to the Republican primary voters calling for a change in Legislative District 5 and endorsing Jake D'Angelo for county legislator. Why did you take this unconventional step, which is in disagreement with the Republican Putnam County GOP?
So thank you, and it's an honor to be here. And I don't believe that people that are in elected office should wait until they are running for re-election to engage with their constituents. So it's an honor to be here on this platform, and thank you for having me. I served in the state legislature for 6 years. I've been the county executive. This is my first term, now 2.5 years. But I grew up in Putnam County. I'm a lifelong resident of Putnam County. I grew up in the town of Putnam Valley, but the Carmel Central School District. So I'm very much a Carmel kid at heart, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. I went to Carmel High School, graduated from Carmel High School. So I very much care about that legislative district. It's very much like the hub of Putnam County. It's right at the seat of the county. It actually represents the seat of Putnam County, where the county offices building is, the historical courthouse is. And I've been watching it. I've seen the actions from the incumbent legislator, Greg Elner. Quite frankly, both of us ran together a few years back, and we ran on very similar platforms, near identical platforms, in fact. And I've just been very disappointed in his record, and in some cases, outright dishonesty with the people over his votes and his decisions. But at the end of the day, I've always been a supporter of the Republican committee. I'm no longer an elected member of the committee, just to be very clear on that. Our county charter makes it very clear that the county executive and some other elected officers that are countywide are not allowed to be in an elected political committee, such as a Republican committee, Democrat committee. I'm an ex officio member, which is a courtesy, so I can show up and participate. But prior to being in elected office, I was the secretary of the Putnam County GOP. I was the vice chair of the GOP. I was the president of the Young Republicans.
I was going to say that. And weren't you just awarded the Teddy Roosevelt award?
Yes, I was. Yeah. Yes, I was. So thank you. So I helped start the Teddy Roosevelt dinner some 15 years ago, where in fact the first outgoing legislator we honored was Dan Birmingham at that time.
Who's my legislator?
Yes. Okay. So we've there's a long history that I have with the committee. I respect the committee. But at the end of the day, the committee makes its endorsement process. And then sometimes I believe the leadership of the committee is sometimes hamstrung because they've bought into supporting one candidate. They've gone through their process. Jake D'Angelo is someone I've known for many years. He worked for me part-time in the assembly, but I also saw him when he was working in his family's business, managing his family's home renovation business. And I've seen him work his way up the ranks in the Young Republicans and a number of other areas. He got on the ballot all by himself. He didn't have me. He didn't have anyone that works for me knock on doors and get him petitions. He got on the old-fashioned way and secured more signatures to get qualified on the Republican line than the incumbent Greg Elner. So he did that all on his own. But since that time, I think what we have seen is a series of events where the incumbent legislator Greg Elner has exposed himself and the reputation of this county as it pertains to farmers in the agricultural district, as it pertains to issues with spending on specific nonprofit agencies with taxpayer money, as it pertains to even the Early Learning Center to some point. Hopefully we can talk about that a little bit. But also, I think there's obvious examples with his own personal issues that are being investigated by the town. So there's other issues I can go into as well. But at the end of the day, I'm the top elected Republican leader in Putnam County. Right. I'm not on the committee.
Right, so you don't have to really officially align with them.
I typically do, and I respect them a lot, but I have the freedom to support who I want, right? As any American can, right? You all have the right to go into the voting booth and cast your ballot for whoever you want. State election law makes it very clear that when you get enough petitions to qualify on the ballot, you're on the ballot. But it's not a decision I make lightly. But the bottom line is someone needs to lead. Someone needs to step up and speak the truth to the voters, to let them know about the actual issues that have been going on. And in the absence of anybody else doing that, I feel very much obligated to do it, to unify the party, to strengthen the party, because I'll tell you right now, Dominique, I don't believe Greg Ellner can win. We have a strong, credible candidate that's a Democrat running in the general election. Jake D'Angelo has the Conservative Party endorsement. I don't believe the Conservative Party has an appetite to give it to Greg Ellner at all. So at this point, the voters, the Republican voters in that district need to know they have a very important decision. It is in my interest as a county executive and as a resident to have a Republican legislature and have that seat held by a Republican. I will work with whoever is there. I will do my darndest, as I always have. But the reality is those voters deserve to need to know that. And that's why I made the endorsement for Jake. He's earned it, and I believe he's going to win.
So you alluded to an investigation for Greg Ellner. So a recent news report detailed an investigation in which he had put an extension on his house that requires sewer connection and for over a decade and without paying. Ellner has responded since by stating, I'll read his quote, like many families balancing competing priorities, we fell behind and the final step was never completed. The home addition was and is fully assessed and taxed appropriately. It was a case of life moving on. Once I was made aware of the situation, I contacted the Carmel Building Department to bring the matter into full compliance, end of quote. So everyone deserves due process, right? And so what's your opinion on this matter? And do you think it has any relevance to Ellner's role as a legislator?
So I think there's two parts to answer that question. One, does this have a specific responsibility to him as a Putnam County legislator? I think that's less clear. This is a town investigation, so let me just be very clear about that. This was not initiated by the county executive or our health department or anyone in county government. That being said, our county's Department of Health does oversee a lot of the septic system programs. So if it has to do with a septic system that was supposed to be upgraded, there is an oversight element from the health department. So I do think that could be problematic. As pertains to special districts or sewer districts and sewer hookups, that's obviously more to local government. Building and assessing is done at the local and town level. Now, as someone that's worked in the private sector, public sector, nonprofit sector, I have the benefit of having served in roles in local government, including as a planning board member for the town of Putnam Valley. I can tell you that it is not that unusual for the assessor and the building department to not have the same information. Mm-hmm. So that does sometimes happen. But the reality is that investigation at the town level, I think, does still speak to someone's credibility as a candidate. So when someone is going to run for elected office, regardless what their position is, I think integrity and honesty and playing by the same sets of rules as is expected for everybody else, rules for thee, but not for me, what we all experienced during the COVID-19 pandemic, I think people are sick and tired of that, especially from politicians. So what I would say is I do think it is absolutely a factor that people need to consider. And I think looking at the assessment and the assessor's statement, I don't know the assessor and I can't speak to the veracity of his comment or quote. All I know is what I read in the Journal News report. And what I can say is typically they can only assess what they see, like what's there. So that's not taking into consideration things that are not existing that are supposed to be existing. For example, it's kind of hard to assess a septic system upgrade that never happened. It's hard to assess a sewer hookup that never happened. But what did happen is supposedly 1,000 square foot expansion to a home residence. Now, if this was some sort of like mundane parking ticket down in White Plains that someone forgot about 10 years ago, I think most of us would understand that. But if it's a significant improvement onto one's home, I think you would be reminded about it every time you walked into the door and saw that. So 10 years, I don't think it makes sense for someone to reasonably accept the argument that you forgot. I think it's that you got away with it for 10 years. Someone clearly, was aware and leaked this to somebody, and it has become since a campaign issue. And it does speak to the credibility of a candidate. It is a distraction. It is not helpful to the functioning of government or the county legislature. So it is a distraction, but it also is a very, very much a hindrance to a candidate that needs to win in a general election who is already wounded because he does not have the conservative line.
Right. That's a good answer. Let's return to the subject of you supporting Jake D'Angelo. Why are you so confident that Jake D'Angelo could deliver for the constituents in District 5?
So, sure. Jake is someone, like I said before, I've known for a long time. He actually started out, I met him in the assembly office. He was, we have some friends in common. My father-in-law knew his grandfather, and he worked in my assembly office part-time. And I got to see him roll up his sleeves and work hard for a lot of candidates. I know he's a true believer in America first, and he's a very red-blooded Republican, a real Republican, conservative Republican. And I've seen him roll up his sleeves and help people like Lee Zeldin. I've seen him roll up his sleeves and help people like Rob Astorino, Mark Molinaro, myself, Matt Slater, Mike Lawler. And do you know what all those people have in common? When they got involved in government and they ran for office and politics, they were all in their 30s or 20s.
I was going to say the factor of his age has come up more than once or twice. You know, he's only 23 years old. So you don't think that affects his ability at all, being so young? Absolutely not. It's a strength.
Tell that to John Curzio. Tell that to Mark Molinaro. Tell that to Elise Stefanik, who ran and got elected to Congress at 30 years old. So being in your mid-20s and having the courage to step up and serve and hold your elected representatives accountable, I think that is a huge strength. And one thing I share with people that solicit me for political advice when they look for, who's the right candidate to support, who should we support for Congress or governor? I mean, ultimately, it's up to the voters. It's not up to me. It's politicians don't decide elections. Party bosses don't. The voters do. But as a Republican who values limited government, lower taxes, constitutional freedoms, our Second Amendment, you need to support a candidate who has that X factor. You need to compete and expand your voter base, reach out to independents, to blanks, get some of those Democrats that moved up from New York City that are upset with what happened to New York City. A young candidate very much has that attraction, has that magnetism.
That energy.
People want to hear from you. They want to see you reach out and earn their support. And Jake has all those things. And not for nothing, he's a lifelong resident of the town of Carmel. I heard some banter from people that he rents. Look, I ran for the state assembly and I rented. I had my wife. We were raising our family. When you rent, you pay property taxes. And anyone that's telling you different is lying to your face. When you are paying rent, you're paying the landlord's property taxes. Otherwise, it's not in their interest. So that man, Jake, has just tons of energy. He's got a lot of experience. And as a young candidate, it's not about necessarily the quantity of your experience. It's not about the years. It's about the quality of your experience. And it's about what you're going to do. What are you running on? What are you going to do to make this county better? I know that if I'm doing something different that Jake wants, he's going to call me out and hold me accountable, as he should. But I also know, importantly, Jake is a man of his word. He's a man of honor and integrity. And if he makes a campaign pledge to you and a promise to your voters, to the people in that district, he's going to keep it.
He's also endorsed by the Conservative Party, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And it's crucial for them to win the general election. He's going to be going up against Brett Yaris, I believe, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So let's briefly discuss the broader implications for Putnam County government. In your opinion, the objections you've raised against the incumbent Greg Elner, it is just about his voting record, or are you speaking to a broader concern for the county legislator?
It's about both. So to back up a little bit, your comment about the Conservative Party and Jake, why that is so important is we've seen a number of races in Putnam County. Republicans in this county, I'm a lifelong Republican. I'm not a registered conservative. I've always been a registered Republican since 18 years old. But sometimes we take things for granted because we have a predominantly Republican legislature. Let's just remember a couple years ago where 3 of the 6 town supervisors were Democrats. Okay, Maureen Fleming in the town of Kent, you had Sam Oliverio in the town of Putnam Valley, and Phillipstown's been Democrat for quite some time now. So it is not that unreasonable to think that things can slip back the other way. Look at Sheriff Kevin McConville when he defeated Robert Langley. He won with the conservative line. Had that conservative line gone to Robert Langley and those votes transferred, Robert Langley likely would have won or would have been a heck of a lot more competitive. Look at legislator Tony Adonisio from the town of Kent, who represents a sliver of Patterson. There is no way on this earth that she would have won her reelection had it not been for the conservative line. She won by the skin of her teeth. Thankfully, she's on the legislature. It's a Republican in that seat. But the reality is, had she not had that conservative line, she would have lost. So
Currently,
I think
how many Democrats are on the legislative board?
one.
Right.
And legislator Nancy Montgomery, she's from Phillipstown. I have a healthy professional relationship with her, despite our strong disagreements on a number of issues. And while I may have I like her personally and we can work well because we're professionals, I do not want her to have another Democrat on the board to second any idea that I, quite frankly, no offense, Nancy, I think is crazy. Mm-hmm. If I think it's going to hurt this county, I don't want that. I want a Republican on the board. So that is a bigger issue. So I think you're talking about Mr. Ellner's record and to your more recent question about broader implications about the county legislature in general. I think there is a reflection of that, but the difference is this. When legislator Ellner ran, we ran on a shared platform of ideas and promises to the voters. Those other legislators perhaps did not do that.
So as you know, Greg Ellner was a guest on this show, and he was talking about the cost of living adjustment and his reasoning behind voting for yes to increase pay, to have an increase in pay, was because he wanted to compensate the coroners and the sheriff, but not the legislators on the board. What is your thoughts on this?
It's bizarre and very inaccurate. So first, I would say a cost of living adjustment is an increase that typically mirrors the rate of inflation, right? And elected officials certainly call it a raise for our public employees when it's factored into their contract, and it's a COLA. It's viewed as a raise, so it's pay raise. We have remarkable elected officials in many different capacities. Our sheriff, I wish him well. Our coroners, our county clerk. So there's, but those were adjustments for them, and they're elected officials. So by their very nature, it is political. It doesn't mean they're not deserving. But as I shared before, I made a commitment when I ran for office with legislator Ellner to freeze pay raises for politicians as a way to demonstrate some fiscal discipline. I think you need to give someone something tangible to show that with people crushing under inflation and you have outstanding public employee contracts. When I took office, we had one of our unions, the PBA, was out of a contract. The other three were all operating under short-term one-year rollover contracts. You got to take care of your public employees before you take care of the politicians. And I think most people understand that. Mr. Ellner ran on a platform that was even more significant than mine, where I said freeze pay raises for politicians. That doesn't mean it's a permanent freeze. It just means let's take care of our people first and demonstrate some restraint. He said, and I only saw this on Facebook, it's kind of funny, the other day, his cover photo on his personal profile, it's his old campaign literature. And it says he wants to freeze compensation for all elected officials.
So why would he use outdated literature?
Well, that I can't speak to, other than it's a very poor reflection of his campaign. But the reality is, it's very dishonest. But freezing a compensation for elected officials, compensation is a much broader term than just speaking about salary. So that is very broad. So he clearly did do that. But your question specifically about he just did it for certain officers, right, but not others. So in 2023, my first year, we were putting forward our 2024 budget. What the legislature did was they put in pay raises for the legislators in their tentative budget. It's like very early on in the process. And when they do that, it shields them from an executive veto. That's how our charter is written. So I could not veto lawfully their pay raises. Now, that's because they matched what they thought was a cost of living adjustment for other management.
And was it reasonable?
I think it was reasonable in that it matched other manager salaries, but not reasonable if you're taking the posture and position that I'm not giving any increases to politicians. Mr. Ellner let that go through for the legislators. And then in committee, when the pay raises came up for them to increase salaries for the other elected officials. I mean, this is thousands of dollars, right? So if you have a 3% increase or a 2.75% in this case increase to a salary of someone who's making over $150,000.
What's the average salary for a legislator?
It's about $47,000. So you're talking about close to $1,000 increase. So a little bit more. But you do that for these other elected officials. He abstained, oddly enough, because he was trying to, I think, in my opinion, honor his pledge. He abstained. He hid from the vote. I don't want to vote for it. Well, just vote no. Vote no. You need yes votes to pass things. You don't need no votes. But he abstained. He asked me specifically to veto the pay raises for the elected officials multiple times.
He verbally asked you?
Yes. Verbally asked me multiple times, Kevin, we ran on this. You're not going to do pay raises. I'm like, no, I'm not going to do it. I'll veto it. He asked me to. And then when it came time to actually veto it, I did because I thought he'd have my back. Mm-hmm. And then several weeks later, he called me up, which I appreciate. He did it like a man and said, you're not going to like what we have to hear. I have to vote to override your veto. I told him I thought it was a really bad decision. He ran on it. We ran on it together. Mm-hmm. I could move forward from that because I'm an adult. I'm a big boy. But the reality is you got to square that with your constituents. And he voted to override the veto. So we moved forward. So he, not once, but he voted to override the veto because there was 3 vetoes for each elected officer that he gave pay raises for. That was in 2023. Go to 2024 as we do our 2025 budget. We weren't in the same situation. He voted each time because I knew they may try to shield the legislature from executive vetoes. They did not put in those pay raises. They put in the match, which was at the time 0, and they voted to raise pay for all the legislators and every other elected official, excluding the county executive, which is fine with me. I didn't want one. If they did it, I was going to veto it. And he did it in committee, and he did it at the full. And so he voted multiple times.
He didn't approach you this time?
No.
Okay.
No, but he voted multiple times to increase pay for politicians just this past year. Now, what I did was, quite frankly, I'm a realistic. You have to be pragmatic at some point. There is a nature of compromise with governing, and you can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. When I see the legislature passing pay raises for politicians, I honor my commitment. I vetoed it the first time. Clearly, it upset a number of those officials on the legislature. So I made it clear, look, you do this. I'm not going to sign it, but I have a way, there's a method for the executive to passively let something go through by not vetoing it, and it just goes into effect, and that's what I did.
Do you think the fact that you wanted to veto this puts a target on your back?
I think with some of them it did, and it led to some of the resentment that some of the politicians had, but this is what I will tell you, it's odd. When I ran in 2022, I told the people of Putnam County, and it's the truth, I took on the establishment in Albany, and if I have to take on the establishment in Putnam County, I'll do that too. And I meant it. Some people run for office, and they give you all sorts of platitudes and campaign promises, and they're full of it. That's not me. I don't need to do this for the rest of my life. I had a promising career before I ran for elected office in the nonprofit and the private sectors, the master's degree in public administration, where I concentrate in healthcare administration. I have all sorts of experience in healthcare and background.
Just out of curiosity, what is your end game? What do you plan on doing after you serve as a county executive?
So I am absolutely going to run for re-election next year. That's my plan. That's my focus. I want to make this county that I love the best it possibly can be for the next person to take over. So that's
there's a term limit?
There's term limits, yes.
Okay.
We have term limits. They're inconsistent the way they're written, and there's loopholes that existed from my predecessor that got an extra term. I would have preferred that loophole be closed. It's not. But the reality is I know what the terms were when I ran for elected office, and that's what they are today. So I'm not looking to do anything with term limits. I was very aware of that when I ran the first time. But there's plenty of opportunities for me. I shared, I'm involved with a number of different organizations outside of Putnam County. I'm involved with a number of my former colleagues in the state legislature, folks down in Washington, and folks with the healthcare industry that, there's no shortage of opportunity for me beyond a political life. I have a young child at home, so my priority is always my family. I'm doing this to care for my family and everyone else's because I had a remarkable upbringing upbringing here with my parents. And I want every other family to have that same opportunity. And I want every child that grows up here to have the opportunity to stay here. That's when I first ran. When I first ran for the Assembly in 2016, I felt we were losing a generation of New Yorkers. And we have people fleeing this state and fleeing this county, not because they want to have a career in Hollywood. If that's what they want to do, God bless, right? That's fine. But they're leaving because they can't afford to stay here. That to me is unacceptable. That's what we have to try to do to make better. So, and my goal is I'll do the very best I can, but whoever succeeds me, I want them to do better than me because that's good for the county.
Let's discuss policy victories in the next step for Putnam County. Your State of County address anticipated the largest property tax in Putnam County's history in your upcoming budget. How did we get here?
So there's a lot of work that went into there. So what I'll say is, for starters, we walked into government and in the county executive, and in my first budget, we cut taxes in the budget for the first time in 25 years, which was huge. And the legislature supported it. There's always modifications and adjustments here or there on certain things, but they supported it. When I came into office, the mill rate, right, the tax rate for our property taxes was 3.12. And what that means is $3.12 per $1,000 of the assessed value on your property that you're paying property taxes on. In my first budget, we drove that down to 2.87, which is $2.87. I'm sorry, 2.87. After some modifications with the legislature, we drove it down to $2.85, so it went down 2 cents, which is and was the lowest property tax rate in 15 years.
How does that compare to other counties?
That's a great question. So let me just continue a little bit more. So into our second budget, we drove the tax rate further down even more from 2.85 to 2.7. So right now it's the lowest tax rate in 18 years. That's our tax rate. Now, why do I feel like that's great? We should celebrate it. And I do. It means a lot of people worked hard. We've been disciplined. But why is it not enough? And why should we always continue to strive to do better? Because when you look at the mill rates with some of our surrounding counties, those that have used mill rates, not every county uses mill rates. Sometimes they use a different formula and different system. But Dutchess and Orange, their mill rate is still 20% lower. So I know that despite our best efforts, despite the fact that the county tax rate and taxation is only 9% of your total property tax bill, the vast majority is schools, towns, or special districts. But if I can lower your taxes, I'm going to do it. I shouldn't hide behind, the school tax is so high. If we can do better, we should do it.
Now, is it because of the locality to the city? Is that the reasoning why we would be higher than Dutchess or Orange County? Rather, why is theirs lower than ours?
So part of it is discipline in priority-based budgeting. Make sure you prioritize your spending. Anyone that wants to talk about taxes and be truthful with you should be talking about spending, because that's where you need to draw the revenue from to fund your spending, right? So I would not tie it to New York City at all. I think that would be some sort of deflection that a politician might say. What I do think is fair is the historical nature of the commercial tax base in the counties and in Putnam. So if you look at the Hudson Valley, you look at Westchester, Rockland, Dutchess, Orange, they have always traditionally had a much larger commercial tax base than Putnam County. So they've been able to leverage sales tax and economic development in a way that Putnam County has not. Now, I believe it was in 2019, after there was a Supreme Court decision that involved Wayfair, it changed the game for many of us, because what it did was it would allow us to collect sales tax based on where you live, similar to how you purchase a car. Yeah. So why was that so big? And I had to change my mind in the assembly. In the beginning, I was like, no, I don't want a new online tax, because if people aren't paying, it's not. My biggest issue was it was for the longest time considered unconstitutional because of interstate commerce, because it crosses lines, right? So you're changing the very nature of sales tax collections. So you're not paying sales tax based on where you buy it, right? You're paying sales tax based on where you live and where you're buying from. So that has been a huge boon for us. Clearly, after the Supreme Court decision, I supported the online sales tax because then it was considered constitutional. But that has been huge. So that changed the game. So for years, Dutchess and Orange had that benefit, and now they're getting online sales too. So I think that was a big difference maker for us. But that alone brings in revenue. It's not enough to just drive down property taxes. You have to control spending, be disciplined about it. And part of that is about, look, don't be foolish and slash your sales tax rate. If you slash your sales tax rate, you're going to handcuff your ability to provide property tax relief now and in the years ahead. So some politicians in the legislature, they were divided, almost split down the middle. They wanted to cut the sales tax rate and drop it from 4% to 3.75. That would have foregone close to $5 to $6 million in lost revenue. And eventually, whether it's now or in the years ahead, future administrations would have had to rely more on property taxes when we don't have to. I struck a deal with our leaders town level.
I was going to say,
Yep.
9 was in a total of 9 town
6,
mayors
yep.
and go ahead.
6 town supervisors, 3 village mayors, the entire state delegation to the New York State Legislature. I told one of the supervisors, I said, look, if the legislature passes this sales tax cut with 5 votes, it opens up an opportunity that if I veto it, then presumably they won't have the votes to override me. I'm not going to do that foolishly unless I have a compromise to present to them in real time to act on. I think that would be very foolish on my part. I said, so if you can arrange a meeting and you want to, if you get all the people together, I'll go. And that's what they did. It was their initiative. The town supervisors, village mayors, got the state senators, the assembly people from both parties together. They sent me a letter inviting me. They copied the chair of the legislature. I guess some people feel like that wasn't an invitation. I interpreted that she was invited, but I understand she feels differently about it. But at that meeting, we hammered out a proposal that 1/9 of the 1% of the 4%, because it was a 1% extension, would be shared with towns and villages. So what that did was it would share close to $2.5 million of that $5 to $6 million with towns and villages based on population, not as a blank check. There's a line in the sand for me, no blank checks, but for infrastructure projects, which is important. And the rest could be stayed with the county so we could give property tax relief. But as part of that compromise, I said every supervisor, village mayor, state senator, some people need to say yes. I want a letter from you all to me saying you support this because I'm not going to veto their cut without that letter. I want everyone on record, everyone on the boat together, and that's what they did.
And it was bipartisan.
It was bipartisan, and it came with a commitment from me that with this, I would commit to cutting the property tax levy for the county, which is about $46 million, by at least $1 million, which would be by far, by a mile, the largest property tax cut in Putnam County history.
Right.
Yes. So we're going to drive that rate down even more, and we're going to keep doing great things. But I do need, there's checks and balances between the executive and the legislature. We need folks to communicate with each other, to work with each other. Yes, we can disagree. We can fight like cats and dogs. But for that even to happen effectively, there needs to be a dialogue. There needs to be communication. Some do that and some don't.
So you alluded previously to the Early Learning Center, a Think Differently initiative, recently that passed the county legislature. What did it take you to get to this piece of the project over the finish line, and what can parents expect next?
So this is a remarkable opportunity, and I am grateful to the legislators who ultimately voted for this. In the end, it was unanimous, but not without a lot of effort and, quite frankly, browbeating by some people to ensure that there could be discussion at a public meeting. This is a new initiative as part of our Think Differently platform. It's something that I adopted from Mark Molinaro in Dutchess County. I supported it in the state legislature, and I support it as county executive, where we tried to make us as a county more accessible to people of every ability. But what some people may or may not know is a mandated function of county government is early intervention services and CPSE, the Committee on Preschool Special Education Services. So what that is educational services for that pre-K community with special needs. So most people don't even know that we do this. Most people think education, it's the schools. It's all the schools. And for the most part, they're right. And it's a school board and a school district, and they're regulated by the state education department and SUNY, not the county. But in this case, that pre-K community with special needs, those services are provided by the county. What most people don't know, unless you're in that group and you're a concerned mom or dad dealing with this, is those special needs children at 3 and 4 years old have been having to go on a bus to get transportation to get their services outside of the county because we don't have enough providers in the county. So what does that do? It has a special needs child that's 4 years old sitting on a bus for an hour to an hour and a half to get services. First of all, that's wrong. We should do better. If this is something that we have to do, we should do it right. Second of all, it costs us a lot of money. Costs us a tremendous amount of money in transportation costs. So we identified this opportunity. It was talked about for many years in previous administrations, but it wasn't financially viable because it would cost money to centralize it in Putnam. Well, what changed? What changed was universal pre-K in the school districts. When school districts started to opt into providing universal pre-K programming, they too are looking for space. So that's not necessarily in the schools. They're looking to partner with daycares, nurseries all over the county. So what we were able to do is come up with this early learning center concept, and it was a testament to an amazing team at the health department who worked diligently on this, our finance team, everybody. They did their survey to find appropriate locations that fit all the criteria that they laid out.
How many locations will there be?
There's right now one, but they had to survey a bunch of potential sites. They settled on one, which is at the Inter-Arts facility. It's part of Community-Based Services, a nonprofit that also cares for people of every ability, people with different disabilities, including adults. But they had this unfinished space that we could use and build out to our own needs. They came up with this concept where it's centralized. So there's atypical pre-K children with the school district centralized there, and our CPSE children there. So this will cut down on transportation times. It will provide a better educational experience for these children, and it will save taxpayer money. Huge home run.
Win-win situation for everyone.
Huge home run. Yeah. So I announced this. We had a meeting in February of 2025. It was put together last minute because I thought we were going to run out of time. The health department got all the stakeholders together, the school district people. They invited the legislature. A couple showed up. But we did that in February, got some buy-in. And then in March, I had this decision, go or no go. State of the county time, I got to make my presentation to the legislature, to the public. I went on the road, did it at every senior center, and I announced it in March. In April, the health department gave a comprehensive presentation to the legislature about the Early Learning Center. They asked for something to vote on. They weren't given that opportunity. It wasn't ready yet. They were then, after that, given a tour. 2 different tours were scheduled for legislators to tour the facility. In all of these steps, we heard nothing but positive feedback, and that's what the parents heard. So when it got to May, and our administration, the law department and the health department, sent it to the legislature for discussion and approval, I was quite frankly stunned that the chair of physical services, Mr. Elner, refused to put on the agenda. He wanted apparently a private audience with multiple members of the administration to talk about these issues and push an alternative location, which had been ruled out by our health department for reasons that, quite frankly, are confidential and need to be discussed in executive session with the legislature, but not with one individual legislator, with all of them, right? That's the whole point. The legislature gets their powers as a body. For the most part, they function as a body, not individually, right? So that meeting, the information was shared. Mr. Elner asked for access and information from the department heads. They all showed up to give him whatever he wanted. Legislator Crowley made multiple motions to put it on the agenda for discussion, and Mr. Elner refused. And so did Mr. Yankee, refused to put it on the agenda in physical services. And I'll tell you what happened. It was the same night as the sales tax compromise. They ratified it. And again, thank you. I'm grateful for it. I was in my office watching. I wanted to walk out to see what was going on. And there was a gaggle of parents outside my office. I walked out to see a mother crying who was upset because they didn't even have the opportunity to speak out. Because when someone went up to the podium to speak their piece and advocate for this issue, they were shut down by the chair, which was Mr. Elner, and the meeting was adjourned. Now, I knew there was a health committee coming up next, chaired by Ms. Adonisio. So I told those parents, among other things, I said, look, this is everything we sent with the legislature, so they have all this information. It's not a secret. I said, look, I'll be with you this time. I don't normally do this, but I'll march there. I'll sit there with you. I did to the whole health committee meeting. I saw Ms. Russo, Legislator Russo, try to make a motion to put it on for discussion. That failed. They tried to adjourn the meeting, and quite frankly, I went up to the podium and I stopped. They said they adjourned the meeting. I didn't hear them vote, so I continued to speak out, and not in my style. I was not prepared to speak. I was wearing a camouflage baseball cap and a polo and jeans because I had just come from a constituent forum earlier in the day. I was not prepared to go and speak at a legislative meeting, but I have a First Amendment right too, and I can speak out to the public, to all those people that were there. And anyone that doesn't want to hear me was welcome to leave. But I am grateful. Legislator Adonisio, in the end, I think the cameras were still on at the time, so I think that played a factor. But they did listen after some pushback. They reconvened the meeting. They added it as other business to the agenda and then let people speak. I do believe that the special meeting that later that week on audit, I don't know if it would have been discussed that week. I don't know if they would have called a special. Had I not interjected myself. That is not my style. I normally would not do something like that, but I'm not going to sit down. You know, there's a time when leaders need to step up and lead, and people need to be honest and straight with the people and with the legislature. So in the end, look, no matter how we got there, it doesn't matter to me, but it was not some sweet, rosy road to get a vote. There is still work that needs to be done. The legislature is going to have to pass some budget transfers to make sure that this can be done. But they did vote for the lease. They voted for the resolution to celebrate this and support it so I can enter into agreements with the school districts.
So what is the expected date, though?
September, which was great. That's why this was so important. That's why I had to intervene. And I don't think this was really reported on fairly by a lot of the press. I mean, some of them put a picture of me speaking
With your camouflage on?
Yes,
Oh.
but they didn't really share it. Unless you watch the meeting, you're welcome to watch it. You know, thankfully, after again 22 years of pressure, the meetings are now live on YouTube. You know, some people said they were going to do it right away, and they didn't. But I don't care. It's there now, so you can go watch it. But that was the issue: is the health department has to file their applications with the state. Caring for children with special needs has a lot of regulations. There's a lot of important steps, a lot of criteria that you need to meet to ensure the safety and well-being of these children. And our health department need to apply by June 15th. So for us to be able to implement this for the fall semester by September, we needed an action. I mean, you could delay it a week, sure, but like the parents had been hearing for months that there was support, and then all of a sudden an about face clearly awakened a movement. Now, I think the legislators ultimately embraced this, and I am grateful. And if they had a genuine other idea that would have been better, sure, we would have wanted to entertain it. But the way to do that is you talk with the administration, you talk with the health department. If you have to go in executive session, you do, which is what they did. And I want them to have every answer to every question they have.
I can't imagine like how crushing it would be for a parent that has this expectation and then it's just shut down, right? Because I would assume there's a lot to go into having a child like that, you know? Mm-hmm.
Look, I'm not going to I'm sure, I know those legislators, including Mr. Ellner, Mr. Yonka, I know they all care about this, so I'm not discounting any of that. But they put it at risk. I'm just grateful that ultimately, however it happened, it's going to happen now. It's going to happen now. We're going to make a real positive impact on the lives of those children. And, you know, people always talk about property taxes. You asked me about property taxes, sales tax earlier, right? Sales taxes, property taxes, 70% of your property tax bill, in some cases 75%. So for decades, you've had politicians on the legislature, county executives, throw up their hands and say, I can't do anything about school taxes. Well, here we have an opportunity to actually do something, to partner with our schools that will help the bottom line on a property tax. Whether if they increase school taxes or not, it's going to help our county spending and taxes. And we have an opportunity to partner and do something and make something better and smarter. And it is because of our size and scale as a county. It's unique. But I think this is an opportunity that other counties across the country could look at and model after.
Recently, the Wall Street Journal published a list of sanctuary counties in America, Putnam County being one of them. Is Putnam County actually a sanctuary jurisdiction? What steps have you taken to ensure public safety in this area?
So to answer the question as directly as I possibly can, heck no, we are not a sanctuary county. So the Wall Street Journal article that came out, this is now several weeks ago, and there's been various news outlets and reports that have clarified this situation. The Department of Homeland Security at the federal government came out with, I believe, a premature list of sanctuary jurisdictions, and I think they took a lot of different criteria into place. But they also very clearly said that that was not a permanent list, that it was ever changing, and that people need to check and verify before they use that information or act on that information. So a couple local news outlets did that and called us, and they know we're not a sanctuary county, right? So the Highlands Current, local press outlets, they know we're not a sanctuary county. And the Wall Street Journal did not take that step. So we very much had to set that record straight, which I did online and to the press. The fact of the matter is this. In 2023, when I took office, within my first 6 months, New York City was becoming overwhelmed with homeless illegal migrants, abusing the asylum-seeking process, in my opinion. For a couple years at the time, Mayor Adams had said, we are welcoming you, right, because they're a sanctuary city, and they were virtue signaling to the rest of the country. And it got to a point where clearly they were becoming overwhelmed. They were looking at taking over schools and other facilities to care for these homeless illegal migrants. And it got to a point where they were then shipping them to the suburbs, most notably Rockland County, but then Orange County and Dutchess County. And what I did was I was monitoring the situation. I spoke with our neighboring county executives. We actually spoke with the governor's office. I spoke with the governor directly, her commissioner of Homeland Security, made it very clear to them that we weren't going to be taking any migrants. We don't have the capacity, right? So they wanted illegal migrants to be held at some of the hotels and motels in Putnam County. We do have them. There's not a lot of them. We had our health department do a survey. They were at 80% capacity full. So not a lot of vacancies. But I wanted to monitor it, not just do a knee-jerk reaction, but when it became evident that all the surrounding counties were taking some degree of migrants, in most cases involuntarily, I took the decisive act of declaring an emergency, putting in an executive order that restricted the city of New York and any other outside municipality from using our county and our facilities to offload its homeless migrant population, which would overwhelm our housing system, but also our social service system and a bunch of other health issues. But also, and this is important, I enacted another executive order.
I was going to say, can they overrule you in any way?
So and the reason why I don't take this executive action lightly is because I was a state legislator when Andrew Cuomo completely just abused his executive authority and declared emergencies and just extended them in perpetuity. We saw these things that were fiats that he would present as the force of law. So I'm very mindful of that they're supposed to be temporary, not permanent. So what I did was you can, with an executive order and under an emergency, you can issue directives and orders. You also can suspend local laws, but you have to renew them every 5 days, essentially, right? Wow. So we had to do that. And I also did an executive order to declare Putnam County definitively not a sanctuary county, but a rule of law county that complies with all federal immigration laws, that encourages and promotes the sharing of information between our local law enforcement with federal law enforcement, that keeps us safe, that represents and recognizes all of our Bill of Rights, including due process for everybody. And what I'm very proud of is ultimately the county legislature codified those executive orders into law. So what we did was push back against the city of New York. And what the city of New York did in response was they sued me. They sued County Executive Kevin Byrne in his capacity as county executive and the county of Putnam. And everyone said, Kevin Byrne, they said all sorts of hurtful things that, racial, this and that. It's that's nothing to do with this. But clearly emotionally charged. Said we were going to get sued. We were going to have to settle for, millions of dollars. Well, wouldn't you know it? They sued us and it got dismissed in its entirety. Putnam County won. We won. And Putnam County is still definitively not a sanctuary county, but a rule of law county.
But from them suing, how much did that cost the taxpayer for them just to?
It probably costs, I'll tell you right now, it costs the city of New York a heck of a lot more because they sued over 30 municipalities across the state of New York where they were looking to offload homeless migrants. And I know for a fact that the city of New York's migrant placement provider, which they contracted at the service, had contacted one of our motels in Putnam County. So it was a real issue. This was not some hypothetical. It was going to happen. And we were one of the few that preemptively acted responsibly and stopped it from happening. To answer your question, it cost the county of Putnam about $7,000 to defend us against the great big city of New York, and we won. So I think it was worth every penny.
Definitely. We spoke about this actually before we sat down. There was an article by the Daily Voice Putnam County that compiled a list of the top 10 safest towns in New York. Carmel has the distinction of being the second safest town in New York State. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'll say I believe Putnam County is the 8th safest county, right? So we're very proud that we're the 8th safest county, and there's a lot of factors. One of them is the town of Carmel, right? It is our largest town in Putnam County by far, and it being the second safest county is obviously a big factor. I give a big hat tip and credit to our brave men and women in blue, our sheriff's office, our local police departments, our Kent Police Department over in the town of Kent, our Carmel Police Department, our leadership. I live in the town of Carmel. I live in Mayapack now, right? I grew up in Putt Valley, Carmel schools, but now my wife and I settled in Mayapack. And, we live in one of the safest towns, and we have Supervisor Mike Kazari, a former police chief who's at the helm leading us in town government in the town of Carmel. But it's also a testament to our other first responders, our firefighters, our EMS, our health department, being one of the safest communities in America. It's a reflection of the area and the people who call it home. So I give a lot of credit also to the nearly 100,000 people that live in Putnam County because we look out for each other. We take care of one another, and that is also a big reason why we're one of the safest communities in America.
Putnam County is rich in history, relevant not only locally but nationally. In fact, you've implemented a new slogan in 2025, "Where the Country Begins." What is Putnam County doing to prepare for their 250th anniversary of the U.S.? So
I'll talk about Revolutionary Putnam 250, which is our coin on Rev 250 to celebrate the 250th anniversary of American independence. We've already begun with activities, and I'm happy to talk a little bit about that. But a lot of folks are seeing the culmination of it next year with the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. Your question about the slogan, "Where the Country Begins." It's new to us, but it's not new. The interesting thing is it's actually an older phrase from one of my predecessors, County Executive Bob Bondi, when he had his tourism department promote Putnam County, where the country begins. And then my immediate predecessor, Mary Ellen Odell, modified it to Discover Putnam. So what we did was just add in where the country begins under Discover Putnam. The beauty of that is I've always thought growing up, where the country begins. It's a tag on we're rural, right? We're rural. Like, okay, we're not that rural. Like, we don't have that many farms. We do have some farms, but we're not like real upstate New York. We're not the North Country,
well,
right?
Ask people from the Bronx. They always say that we're upstate. Depends on who you ask.
Sure. But where the country begins, and then the anniversary of our nation's independence got me to realize, actually it was my chief of staff, Dane Pascacello, who brought it to my attention. There's a double meaning. There's a double meaning behind where the country begins. It's where the country begins, sure, as you're traveling up from New York City and you want to go upstate. I will never call Putnam County upstate. We're not. But as you go upstate, you're going to pass Putnam County. We're the heart of New York State. That's what I would say is Putnam County. We're the heart of New York State. But you'll see a more rural feel driving through Putnam County, driving through the miles and miles of protected parkland. But also, we are literally where the country begins. We're across West Point. We are rich in history where George Washington has visited parts of Putnam County, where Sybil Ludington rode longer than Paul Revere to notify, colonists that the British were coming against over the battle in Danbury. So there is so much history right here in Putnam County. We're named after General Israel Putnam, Old Put. So when we hear now Putnam County, where the country begins, it's not just about our rural nature. It is about the rich history. So
The cornerstone of the history.
it is. It very much is. And the leadership of our ad hoc committee to promote the anniversary of our nation's independence is led by two very distinguished people. One is our former governor, Putnam County resident, George Pataki. The other is a member of our community in Garrison who's been a benevolent member of our community supporting many different charitable initiatives, and that's George Whipple. So both of them have made a commitment to raise dollars to do things like restore and refurbish the Sybil Ludington statue on Lake Lenita, as well as help support and fund other efforts like a large-scale reenactment. We did a reading of Longfellow's poem about Lexington and Concord, the shot heard round the world. We did that earlier this year, where George Whipple and I read segments of of different poems. We had Putnam County Day celebrate a few weeks ago, where George Whipple and George Pataki did interviews talking about it. And we got the Putnam County Fair coming up. So the Putnam County Fair, you go to putnamcountyny.gov and learn more about it. There's going to be an exhibition tent to promote our American independence. And Constitution Island, most people don't know Constitution Island.
No, I've never heard of it, no.
So Constitution Island, it's a federal government property, right? It's owned by the federal government, but it's within Putnam County, across from West Point, just on the Hudson River. It's where the Werner sisters resided at one point. One of the Werner sisters wrote the hymn, Jesus Loves Me, right? So lots of history there. And they have activities. The Putnam Museum has activities. So we're very excited about all those things.
Yeah, that's really exciting. So go on that website, and then you can see the list of all the different events.
Yeah, what I would say is go to putnamcountyny.gov and then go to the tourism website, which is very much featuring Rev 250 activities or Revolutionary Putnam County activities.
I'm going to definitely check that out. You introduced the youth business market. Now it's in the second year. For people that might not be aware of this entrepreneurial endeavor, what is the youth business market, and where did this idea come from?
So the youth business market is our take on the children entrepreneur markets that I learned about happening across other portions of the country. You may remember a few years ago, now it's probably 5 years ago, there were some really glaring examples of overzealous bureaucrats shutting down children's lemonade stands. It happened in Texas, it happened in upstate New York, but it happened in a couple other states. And do you know why?
No.
They shut them down because they weren't paying sales tax.
Oh, my God.
They didn't have a health permit.
Yeah.
Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. A kid's lemonade stand. So I happen to be part of a nonprofit organization that has been made up of state lawmakers all over the country. It is more conservative-minded, limited government, pro-federalism, and I'm still involved. The organization is the American Legislative Exchange Council, but they have a local affiliate task force called the American City County Exchange, which I am the national chairman of. I went to one of their legislative conferences, and they talked about this concept and how they had the children's entrepreneur markets as a response. And in some cases, they had state legislation to codify it. And I wanted to bring that concept to New York. No other county that we could find did anything like it. And, you know, the state, quite frankly, we asked, would you give us a waiver for sales tax? They said no. And we talked about it internally. I said, well, let them come down here and shut me down, and this will blow up in their face in such a cosmic way, they'll never forget it. So what we did was we said, we're going to do it, but let's be creative. We worked with our Department of Social Services, Mental Health and Youth Bureau. So our Youth Bureau was the tip of the spear. Our Child Advocacy Center and the Friends of the Child Advocacy Center, which is a nonprofit, helped support it too. And we created this youth business market, which provided a safe place for children 5 to 17 years old to come, engage, and sell all sorts of products that they created. So the first time we did this was last year.
And where is this usually? Has it been hosted? Where's the venue?
So I've always said Tilly Foster Farm is a Putnam County park, and it is. So I feel like it's called Tilly Foster like institute. So we have BOCES downstairs below the restaurant. So I felt it was very appropriate to do it at Tilly Foster Farm, which is what we did. The Youth Bureau is actually moving their offices there. Cornell Cooperative Extension is putting their offices there. They're building a new building there. So I felt like it was very much on brand, but also appropriate and logistically made sense. Yeah. So we did it there last year. We had over 70 youth vendors participate, over 500 people visit. People from the Bronx came over, wow. Connecticut, Dutchess County, Rockland County.
It came where the country began.
That's right. But this year we did it the second time. We had over 100 youth vendors participate.
Wow.
Hundreds and hundreds of people come in from all over yet again. But you might think, like, what are you going to come and see? You're going to see a bunch of people selling lemonade? No. I didn't know what these children would come up with. I mean, you would be amazed. I don't have a 3D printer at home. Is that like a thing now? Do parents do that? Like, do you have that?
I don't know.
I don't. So neither do I. But these kids at 3D printers at home, they were making 3D printed dragons, 3D printed keychains.
That takes a long time.
Yeah. You're telling me. We had someone braiding different wrist bracelets. We had, last year, this child, it was amazing. I mean, Chile, this was a child that was just remarkable. He did, he was showing people that he could solve a Rubik's Cube in 30 seconds. Can you solve a Rubik's Cube?
No.
Okay, I can't either.
Give me, I don't even think a whole year would go by. I wouldn't even be able to solve it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, me neither. Maybe it'd be a decade and I can't get it done. I'd have to take a hammer and chop it up and put it back together. This young man got it done in 30 seconds. And wouldn't you know, he's not selling that. He made a little cheat sheet and he was selling it for a couple bucks. So remarkable.
That's
this
clever.
Year, unbelievable. This year, he was selling chess lessons and was teaching you how to take someone out in 5 moves in under a minute. It was unbelievable. We had children. I didn't know that crocheting was a big thing again. We had young girls crocheting, making flowers, making stuffed animals. We had children selling lollipops. My niece, my goddaughter was there. They had these makeup kits that they put together. Absolutely awesome. So this is providing a safe place for them to do this. It's showing that entrepreneurship and capitalism is also a good thing, right? And then the great thing is they're making a buck. We have parents coming in, buying different things. This year, my biggest find was a child had a 3D printed handle with a screw top. And then she took a pool, a noodle, for a pool. Mm-hmm. She chopped it down, so it was about this tall, right? She screwed in the handle, and there's a red one and a blue one. And they said it's a lightsaber. And so I have a 5-year-old at home that loves Star Wars, so we're playing with the lightsabers.
Right, and it's padded,
awesome. Yeah. So they're making money from people like me. And then what do? They go to the other stores, and they end up buying stuff from their friends. So it taught them, they're learning math skills. And those that sold actual food and water items, we didn't make them go through a health permit per se. But if they were selling something with water, we made them make a quick phone call with the health department. So we had someone assigned to say, hey, look, if you're going to do this, make sure you don't use water out of your garden hose that could be contaminated. So they're actually and they got certificates from the health commissioner. At this point, he's the health administrator, and myself as county executive. So it's authenticated, right? It's credible. And then they're all coming back next year. So I know my neighboring county executive, Sue Serino, who I'm friends with. She was in the state Senate when I was in the assembly. She'll be upset if I say this, but she's jealous and she's going to do it in Dutchess County, and I'm grateful because she should, and so should Orange County, and so should Columbia County, and so should Westchester County. Everyone should do it. It's a home run.
So when's the next event? When is that going to be hosted?
Next year. So right now it's an annual event. I believe in June. We just did it a couple weeks ago. It was putnamcountyny.gov/YBM. So for Youth Business Market. So if you go to that website, putnamcountyny.gov/YBM, you'll be able to see information about it it'll be obsolete right now, but you'll get some more updates about it.
Well, I look forward to it next year. I'm definitely going to be visiting their little tents. So what is the best way for residents to stay informed, keep up with the news and other information coming out of your administration?
Sure. Well, I've said this before. Some people might not like it, but it's the truth. We're the most transparent administration Putnam County has ever seen. And I say that with a sense of pride, not to go against or criticize anyone that preceded me. Technologies change and evolve, but you need to have leadership that is willing to step up and actually take that step. And when I ran for elected office and I said I was going to make county government more accessible to everybody, I meant it. I recall during COVID, I had more access to my county legislators' meetings because it was audio only, but it was live streamed. And they were doing that because of a state executive order. When I took office, it was audio only, but it was not live streamed. So that's a legislative meeting. So that's something that they really needed to do, not necessarily me, even though I supported it. And I'm grateful that in time they did. So that's good. That's a good on them. They made rules changes since, after multiple years of efforts, to codify the live streaming. I'm disappointed that codification for public comment has not gotten passed. Hopefully in time they'll do that. That would be a good move. But speaking for myself and my administration, I live stream all of my public hearings. So most people don't know this, but when the legislature passes a local law, I'm not talking about a resolution or a budgetary transfer, but a local law, like that you cannot do X, otherwise you might be fined. It requires, like every other resolution or legislative act, most legislative acts, requires approval or veto by the executive. But before I approve or veto a local law, I am required to host a public hearing. It's typically been at the county executive's conference room. And it's posted and noticed in the local newspaper, and probably no one pays attention or sees it. It's put on our county website. Unless you're really paying attention, people don't pay attention or see it. And I don't even know if previous executives went. I don't know if their staff just did it. I go to all my public hearings because I feel like it's a requirement of me as the county executive. I live stream all of them on the county's YouTube channel, all of them. So if you see that no one's there, it's a short meeting, but at least you know you had the opportunity to come. I think so much of transparency isn't about fearful of someone coming in and holding you accountable. That is part of it, and you need to be there for that reason. But a lot of it is so people know that they can do that. They can show up, even if they choose not to. Knowing that they can come to a meeting and challenge you means a lot. So we've done that. I made a pledge to put forward a budget transparency website. I initially proposed it to the legislature as part of a local law to be codified as the Taxpayer Transparency Act. The legislature did not advance that forward or discuss it, but I'm grateful that later that year I got it funded in the budget. So what we didn't do as a local law, the legislature did work with us and we got it done together as part of an accomplishment in the 2024 budget, which has since been consistently funded. That's really important because that means if you think your taxes are too high or you think something's funded by county government that shouldn't be, and you say, Kevin Byrne, you can be doing better. Well, I want to know about it. I don't want to be surprised. So you can go right now on the county's website, go to the finance department and click at our budget transparency website where you can get a comprehensive review of all
line by line.
You can see line by line. You could always see it line by line, but it was with budget codes. So you couldn't really make sense of it. Now you can see our 6-year capital plan. You can see our debt. You can see the records. You can see personnel. You can see everything in an easy and digestible format. So if there's something that you think we can do better, I want to know about it. I've also hosted constituent forums in every town within Putnam County every year I've held elected office. No other county executive has ever done that. I've even live streamed and I've filmed some of them so people can go online and look at it. I also live stream my State of the County and budget presentation. I think County Executive Odell did it once, but it wasn't a consistent thing that they applied. I made it a standard, so hopefully every county executive after me does it. If don't, I think they're going to look a little silly now. But I also took my State of the County this year on the road, and I didn't just do it at Ace Endico, where we had over 230 people in attendance. I went to the legislature, did it again. I went to every friendship center, every senior center in Putnam County, and did it there to them. Wow. And then I did it at the Carmel Town Hall and the Southeast Town Hall. And after that, I continued what I've always done. And this was those one for every town, is my Trailblazing for Byrne events. We meet at a trailhead by the Empire State Trail.
I always do it when I have work.
It's
in the middle of the day. Wait.
Well, feedback is the breakfast of champions. So we will take that into consideration to try to pick a better time. We've done it on weekends, mornings, afternoons.
All right. So
Yeah, but
I'm
we
just
get those.
saying, every time I see it, it's like noon or something like that on a Friday. Am I wrong?
No, well, we try that. We've done it. We mix, but if it's in your town, it might land that way.
Yeah.
But I've tried. We're doing it at libraries now too, and I try to do it as often as I can because that's also how I learn. I mean, it shouldn't be that novel of a concept that you have a elected official, forget county executive, legislator, supervisor, governor, but it should not be a novel concept that an elected official engages with the citizens who give you an idea and you go, wow, that's a good idea. And then it happens. So it's not always a local law. Sometimes it's just like moving something. I remember I did one at Tenetta Lake in Southeast, and it was interesting. A gentleman just walked with us. He said, Kevin, I got an issue for you. I'm like, it bothers me. I'm like, what is it? He goes, see this fence over here? I'm like, well, this is the MTA owns this. He goes, there's no lock on it. Someone could go through that fence and get to the live tracks. I'm like, it's a real issue. He goes, the other issue is, see that overpass that people drive over? I see the cement clump falling down. Well, I went right back to the office. I called the MTA. We called DOT. We got it repaired. And now that man is very grateful, but like I would not have known about that had I not engaged. So there are dozens of examples, but every elected official I feel should do that. If you want to do the job the right way, it takes a lot of time and energy. It is exhausting, but you got to make yourself available.
Right, accessible to the public. Lastly, what's the one takeaway from this interview you would want voters to remember as they head to the polls on Tuesday?
Politicians don't decide elections. Party bosses don't decide elections. People do. Citizens do. Only citizens vote. Be very clear about that. New York City tried to do something nefarious a few years back. Thankfully got cut out in court. But you decide. And that only happens if you show up and you vote. So for those Republicans out there, there are primaries in almost every town in Putnam County. Certainly many more beyond that legislative district race that we talked about, where I am proudly endorsing Jake D'Angelo. And it also shows discipline on my part that even though clearly I'm voting myself, I'm not going out publicly endorsing everybody. But in this case, I very felt like someone needed to be, someone needs to be honest with folks, and someone from political leadership, and I am the top Republican elected official in the county, someone needs to step up and lead. So that's why I felt the need to do that. But for the Democrats over in Phillipstown, they have primaries. So there's a primary in Patterson, Southeast. Kent only has one, and my understanding is because that legislative district with Mr. Elner and Mr. D'Angelo is Hamlin to Carmel and a piece of Kent. But there's one, I said, Phillipstown, Putt Valley has one. I did endorse Jackie Anabi. I'm sorry. I love Jackie Anabi. She's aces. I've worked with her forever. She's amazing. I don't know anything about her opponent, so I'm not disparaging anybody, but Jackie Anabi is aces. And no offense to my town supervisor, Mike Kazari, who I love. He's great, Mike. But Jackie Anabi is the best town supervisor in Putnam County. So.
All right. So there you have it, folks. Kevin Byrne, the Putnam County executive. It's been a real pleasure having you on the show. I hope you come back.
You got it.
If anyone, a small business owner or individual would be interested in sponsoring a future episode, please contact us for details. Thank you for watching the podcast Beyond the Ballot. Like, subscribe, leave us your comments or any questions you might have for future guests. Thank you.